Hi, so today it's the start of a new reading vlog. If you have been around here for a while, you know that years ago I did a spoilery reading vlog for Shane of Gold by Cassandra Clare, which is the only spoilery vlog I've ever done because I hated how that turned out. And because I hated how that video turned out, I have not gotten around to reading the rest of the series because I felt the pressure to continue making spoilery vlogs, but I just wasn't figuring out how I wanted to do it. And now we're in 2023, all 3 books have been released. The last book came out early in the year, and I've been wanting to read this series, and I finally got over myself and said to myself, you know what, you don't need to make spoiler vlogs. And then I reread Shane of Gold, and I did that in a spoiler-free reading vlog, which I'm sure has popped up above at some point, and that has made me reconsider my decision to make spoiler vlogs. So here I am, I'm gonna read Shane of Iron, and I'm gonna make a spoiler vlog, and hopefully it will turn out better. Like I said, this is gonna contain spoilers. If you haven't read Shane of Gold, click off now, because I'm gonna go ahead and do Shane of Gold like spoilers a little bit, because I read that earlier this month and I really love it. I love it more the second time around, and I'm very excited to continue reading. But something I don't like about this series is that all of these characters are related somehow. And then I don't necessarily mean like blood related somehow. It's very hard for me, even though like I know who everyone is, that's easy, but it's very difficult for me in my head to kind of keep making sense of who has history with who and how. So I made, while reading Shane of Gold, I made this character chart, and like it started off as a family tree, and then I realized there were not enough names on it and it was still very confusing, so I made it into just like a character chart. So there's also like relationship lines and stuff. So this is what it looks like at the end of Shane of Gold. And yeah, I'm gonna be adding to that as I'm reading Shane of Iron, and I'll show you how that looks at the end of this video. I'm very excited to go. Let me first already talk about this dedication, which is for Rick Riordan. Thanks for letting me use the noble name D'Angelo, which I want to geek out about because I also recently reread the first Magnus Chase book, and in that Rick Riordan, that book is dedicated to Cassandra Clare because Rick was allowed to use the name Magnus. I thought that was sweet. Hi, so I am 50, well, I'm 2 chapters in, which is 52 pages, so I thought I'd just already discuss what we're setting up so far in this book. So again, in case you have not clicked away yet, spoiler warning heavily for this book. Basically what we're doing right now, the like little like prologue, I'll call it, London East End, I think it's from the perspective of Belial. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but like James's grandfather, I guess. I think that was his perspective. That's what makes the most sense, because it really starts, it was strange and novel to have a human body again, which then also makes me wonder, how did he get a human body? Because he can only be like in a human body for like a long period amount of time, like a permanent amount of time, if it is someone of his own blood, aka like Tessa, James and Lucy at the moment are the only people who are that we know of. So it makes me curious. And then we start the chapter from Lucy's perspective, as she is helping Grace to try, she and Grace are working together to try and get Jesse back from the dead, which is a storyline I don't like. I don't mess with necromancy, you know, and especially because it seems like when it comes to this thing is that Lucy has very hypocritical thoughts on what they're doing, because Grace mentions like going to an actual like necromancer to try and help them out because they've done so much and nothing has worked. And Lucy's like, no, that's wrong, that's not good, we're not doing that. I'm like, what do you think you're doing? That's also necromancy. But from that, we also learn that the Cordelia and James wedding is tomorrow, which enters us further into this chapter from Cordelia's perspective, and she is taken off by Matthew to the bachelorette party, which is her, Anna and Lucy, and then Matthew goes off to the bachelor party with like the Merry Thieves and James, obviously. I thought that was fun, a fun introduction. But we also learn there is that in Hellruel, I again don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but like the club, you know, they're having a holiday, I guess, to celebrate Lilith, which again, I don't want I wrote this down, I don't want Lilith to have anything to do with this. I hope this is just a fun little reference, because Lilith shows up in the second Hell of the Mortal Instruments, I believe. Don't want to do that again. We also learn from a fairy that Wayland is still alive, the guy who made Cortana, and that's concerning. And then in the second chapter we are Again, in this, we're focusing in the second chapter on the bachelor party on James, but something that happens here is that James goes back into the Shadow Realm, which is concerning because that was destroyed at the end of last book. So the fact that he went in there is something. So yeah, that's what happened so far. And the only thing that really has piqued my interest fully is the return of Belial, I guess, the return to the Shadow Realm, and what that could possibly mean and what's going on. I'm also very excited to see the wedding. Now I'm at this part, it says Grace, 1893 to 1896, so I think it's a little backstory on Grace, which I think is because Grace honestly is such a puzzling character to me, because when it comes to her like relationship with James, let's say, I feel like we're supposed to believe like what's going on from the plot. It's like she's being manipulated by Belial, or however you pronounce it, and her mother to like kind of like help put the bracelet on James, because that's what ties the two together, Demon and James, and makes it possible that the demon can possibly take over James in the future, mayhaps. So we know that is a thing that's happening. But then also I feel like for a lot of Grace's actions, it doesn't look like she's acting upon orders from anyone, which is it's just so odd, and I'm trying to figure it out. So I hope this book will give me some more explanation on that. Hi, I am on the 150 page mark, so I thought I'd discuss some things with you because what I just read. But so far these last 100 pages, not a whole lot has happened, but let's still review. We start off with the first chapter from Grace Detective. I've read two of these that talk about Grace's past, and I think they're really interesting. Something I thought was interesting is here in the beginning it says that the day like her parents died, like it felt like her feelings disappeared. I don't know why, but I thought it was an interesting thing. And yeah, we basically just have some backstory on Grace being with Tachana in the beginning, and Jessie, and how she didn't really feel any connection to Tachana, but she did feel a connection towards Jessie. And then at the end of that chapter, Jessie dies. Then we go like a lot of proper section, and it's the wedding basically, and Elias, Cordelia's dad, shows up right before the wedding. It's the wedding. Not a whole lot happens at the wedding. They get married. Something that does happen at the wedding is that Lucy and Grace talk, and they talk about talking to Malcolm Fate, which I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna spoil the dark artifices in this video just in case you haven't read that series yet. I know there's people who just care about like the past Shadowhunters books, but there's a lot of hidden stories to dark artifices in here, and I can sense how we get to the Malcolm Fate and like this series to the Malcolm Fate in the dark artifices, and I don't like it. Then something we also learned at the wedding, I said nothing happened at the wedding, but a lot happened at the wedding. Grace tries to meet up with James to tell him to take off the bracelet, but she is in like the room where they met up, but James doesn't show up. So someone does show up, and it's a maid who is possessed by Tachana, thanks to the help of like the demon that happened. But still, that's slightly concerning, and that's something that's possible. And then we learn that the demon gave Grace the gift of controlling the minds of men to make them do as she wished. It says on here, which is very concerning, because here's the thing, we know something was up with Grace and powers or whatever, but I thought the magic was tied to the bracelet, because in the first book, like, James is constantly wearing the bracelet, she asks it back, and then right after she controls Matthew to kiss her, which is still a very odd scene, and I don't know why we've never had a callback to that, because it's so odd. But I thought the magic was tied to the bracelet because Grace is in possession of the bracelet, and maybe she like touched it to Matthew or something. But now we know that she can just like control men at random. The bracelet has nothing to do with it. Oh, and also something I learned, I didn't notice, is that one of James's middle name is Henry, and because I love Henry, that made me squeal. And then we have James and Cordelia moving into their own home. Nothing special happens here except James obviously lusting over Cordelia, and Cordelia being like, did I do something wrong? It's like, no, the spell is wearing off. That's what's happening. And then we get like this little chapter again of what I think is the demon spying on James and Cordelia. So they go to a party, like an engagement party of people, and here stuff happens because we learn that a Shadowhunter got attacked during a patrol. They just assume it's a demon because, you know, that's regular stuff. They just haven't been used to it yet. It's exactly how James describes it. But it made me go ding 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 ding, something suspicious is happening. And we also learned that Charles fucked up because obviously. And when he was in the Institute in France helping out, he like had a meeting with all the vampire clans of France, but he forgot one. And obviously that clan is now very offended and they think it was done on purpose and not by accident. So got another gray section. This is basically just about her grieving Jessie and Jessie showing up as a ghost and like Tachana delving into dark magic and stuff like that. Nothing we don't know. Also then at the party we have this scene between Anna and Ariadne, which I think is interesting. Very invested in their relationship, even though we're getting only snippets of it. I'm very invested in that. And then at the party we also see Grace take control of Toby, basically, who is the guy the engagement party is for. So that's also interesting to see. I wonder why she used it there. And then after James and Cordelia go home from the party, we get back to Lucy, who stayed home because she was sick. And there we learn that the girl that has been staying with him, that I don't know if I talked about it, but it's Filomena D'Angelo, which is the dedication for. I did talk about that. She's Italian and she's been staying at the Institute. I don't remember why. I don't care. But we learn that she has been wandering a lot. Like she's been not at the Institute a lot. It says here that she's always rushing around London, going to museums and exhibitions. So Lucy hardly saw her, which also makes me suspicious that we keep getting like this demon that's doing something and like in a human body, and at the same time this girl showed up that's like never at the Institute because she's always just like wandering around. We also got a fight between Jessie and Lucy that I don't care about. Here's the thing, I don't think Cassandra and Clare has developed their romance well enough for me to care about them fighting about their feelings. Lastly, the thing that I read was this, which is another thing that I'm assuming this is a demon's perspective. That's why I keep calling it a demon, because that's my theory. We see him, not a thing from his perspective, where he kills the shadow hunter very brutally, and he like traces like with his finger over like a wound from the shadow hunter, and then those powers of that wound get transported to the demon itself, which I didn't know that was possible. It leaves me with many questions about where we're going and what we're doing, but yeah, that's the lowdown on what has happened. Hi, so I finished another 100 pages. This is the tabbing is very sparse. It's a bit disappointing. 100 pages further than allowed, and I can tell you my theory was wrong. So we left off by learning that whoever it is that is murdering the Shadowhunters, which I still think is Belial. I don't know if that's true, but that's my theory. He can take the wounds off of Shadowhunters, which is odd. When we go into the main chapter, we're talking about how another person got killed, and then we also learn that James has been having dreams of these murders as if he was there, which is odd, which also again makes me think that it's Belial, because why else would he be connected to this at all? Oh, we saw Matthew have a fight with Charlotte about his drinking, which, I mean, Charlotte is being a good mother there. That's definitely something to be concerned about. But because of that, he also moved away, which is very concerning to me. We also learn that Christopher experiments on the guns work, but only for James, which I again think is odd, because he experimented it if Lucy could make it work and Lucy didn't. So generally it's only James that can do it, which, like I said, is very odd. And I'm sure that will play into things, but I already thought, but it kept bringing up Christopher working on the guns, and I already thought that it's not gonna work because, you know, we have present timeline and we're not moving guns in there, so it makes sense that it didn't happen. We have James and Cordelia going to dinner with Cordelia's family and Cordelia's dad being an asshole. We have a beautiful picture of Lucy, who've made up with Jessie after a party at Anna's, and then there is another murder, and things get tense for a little because it might look like Thomas's sister Eugenia was killed, which, I mean, two hits in the same family. Cassandra Clare would be cool to do that. So I already suspected that wasn't a thing. But instead, Philomena D'Angelo got killed. So there goes my theory. A ghost approaches Lucy to be like, hey, I know where the ghost of Philomena is. I'll bring you to her if you do something for me. It's lame, but they do go to her. And they don't really get many answers. So I don't really see the point of that. The only thing that happens there is that Cortana seems to reject Cordelia, which is odd. And because we're bringing up Wayland so much in this book, it's especially concerning. Again, a perspective from Grace, another like Grace past chapter, and that's just mainly about how Grace got her powers. So that's interesting, but like nothing really new in there either. And then we also have Elias, aka Cordelia's dad, visiting James, begging for money, and again being an ass. That wasn't fun. We have an interaction between Malcolm, Fade, and Grace and Lucy. The only thing that this is doing is making me concerned for the Dark Artifices, even though I already know what happens there, but I'm like, no. If this didn't happen, we would have never gone down that path. But anyway, we also got interactions between Ariadne and Anna, who have been meeting in the Whispering Room to hook up, and we get this gorgeous picture. I really love this. And then we get another like perspective from like the demon thing, and we see that he is hunting someone, and the person who he's like about to kill recognizes him. And then in like the proper chapter, we learn that Elias, who was killed, and James had another dream, and now he's questioning, because when he woke up, his window was open, and when he went to sleep, his window was closed, and he's sure of that. So now he is thinking that he perhaps might actually be taken over by Belial, and you know, actually murdering these people. Not that he's dreaming it, it's that he's being possessed by Belial and actually doing it, which I have to say, I also thought about this because Belial has said in the first book that the only people he can possess are the people of his own blood, so James, Lucy, Tessa, and therefore, you know, it is an option. But something that I think is odd is that when I think it was Philomena's murder happened, Cordelia will come up from the dream of that happening, because he was having a nightmare, he was tossing, he was screaming, and Cordelia was concerned and like woke him up from that. So I would say if he's actually like being the killer and being possessed and doing it like that, I would think that's odd that Cordelia could wake him up from a nightmare, because you know then those nightmares wouldn't be real, they would be memories instead. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. I just know that my theory that I had previously was entirely wrong. And yeah, here's the thing, I think this book so far is mainly focusing on the character relationships and the romances, and I'm mainly the one between Cordelia and James, and I don't really care about that. And then Lucy and Jesse is another one, and I just don't care about, and I'm focusing on a lot. And yeah, I want more of Grace, like actual news. Like these past couple of chapters from her perspective have been news that we already knew, just like more delved into. And I want actual new stuff, because she's such a complex character in my opinion, and I can't wrap my head around her and her goals and like stuff that she's doing, and how much is just wanting to please her mother and being manipulated by her mother, and how much is her own desires and wants and stuff. And we're not getting a lot of that. And then the actual plot I also think is interesting, but again, we're not getting so much of that. So I wish it would go forward a little bit. So 900 pages pass and a lot happens, so let's recap. So where we left off, James was starting to get suspicious of the fact that he could be it. Spoiler alert, he's not. I knew it. We go to see so we see Grace talking to Tatiana about Annabelle Blackthorne, which she traded information about Annabelle to Malcolm to give information about how to bring the dead back to life. Turns out Annabelle's dead. We knew that. Tatiana tells Grace to go see James. So that's something that happens later. First, we have Cordelia and Matthew going on a trip to basically just restore Cortana with Wayland. I thought that scene was a bit disappointing. Now she's promised to Wayland and to fight in his name and stuff like that. But I don't know, I expected more from that thing. Also, this is also interesting. We got another like Grace past chapter, and in that we see that, you know, back when James went to like first time then to like the Guardians of the Black Thorns, which we saw happen in book 1, Grace tried to compel him and it did not work. So I'm kind of wondering if the bracelet is a bit tied in with that and how it exactly works. That at first James was resistant to her powers, but now he isn't anymore. And we also have Matthew confessing what happened to, like, confessing about his mother's miscarriage and how he feels to blame for that to Cordelia. That also is a thing that happened before they ran off and got Katana fixed. And we know this from a story in Ghost of the Shadow Market, I believe, but it was still absolutely heartbreaking to read again. We also have Thomas showing up to wish condolences to Alistair, which was an odd scene, but I'm hopeful. Here's the thing with Alistair, I think what he said was despicable, and even though he was like a kid and he was trying not to get bullied himself, he should have known better. But like, also I love him. I think he's a cinnamon roll, and I really love him and Thomas together. And we have Lucy trying to command Jessie to come back to life. She could use her powers to command him to live, and things go terribly awry, and then like it is affecting her, but nothing actually happens, and Jessie's like, please stop trying to bring me back to life. And Grace shows up at James's house while Cordelia and Matthew are gone, and she commands him to kiss her, which has happened before. That's the thing that happens. And after that kiss, Grace says, I do not know who you were kissing just now, James Harrenhal, but it certainly wasn't me, which is odd. That's an odd thing to say, isn't it? Lucy gets bothered by another ghost again who wants to help, and Jessie scares her away, and then they fight. They fight a lot. For Cassandra and Clare to make me want to believe that they love each other and they should be together, and that's why Jessie should be alive. They fight a lot. And Lucy and Grace go back to Hell Rule to talk to Malcolm Fate. They went into Ariadne Pritchdock there. That's when she's there with Anna, obviously. But yeah, they talk to Malcolm Fate. He doesn't really say much, and because he wants to know the information about Annabelle first, so Grace tells him what happened with her, and he gets mad and throws them out, and they still know nothing. But then Grace runs away, Lucy's left alone, she finds Ariadne and Anna, and then we learn that Grace was actually supposed to go, when her parents died, she was supposed to go to other living relatives in her family, and that Tajana intervened and bought her, saying, the story is that she's been skulking around the orphanage for years, claiming she wanted a daughter, but she hadn't found any child to her liking until Grace, which is also concerning to me. Like, what's so special about Grace that Tajana just like needed to snatch her up, you know? And then when they are talking, a footman comes to them with a message of James to like quickly come to his house because he needs to talk to them, and Anna kisses Ariadne in front of Lucy, which I thought it's progress, it's cute. And then when they arrive at James, the entire group is there except Matthew and Cordelia, and he like talks about his suspicions of potentially being able to be possessed by Belial, and that he thinks Belial is behind these murders. And then eventually Cordelia and Matthew come home. He confesses the same to Cordelia, and he's scared that Cordelia will be mad, which she isn't. And then they come up with this plan to basically guard James for the night, so they know if something happens that he didn't like actually leave the house. And then between a scene between James and Cordelia, we find out that the bracelet that Grace has given James is broken, because after he kissed Grace, he kind of like slammed against the wall or something in his hand, and the bracelet has like now a little crack in it. But yeah, Thomas sneaks out. He's not helping guarding, he's going off patrolling on his own, and he comes across, I have to find it again. He comes across this woman who was on the brink of death. She was screaming. He ran to her, and he was trying to help her. It didn't work. Before she died, she said he did, but he was dead in his prime. His wife, she wept and wept. I remember her tears. Perhaps there is no forgiveness, which again, odd, very odd. But as he is still kind of like reconciled with the fact that this woman is dead, the Inquisitor and a couple of other people that were patrolling show up, and because Thomas has blood on his hands because he was like trying to stop her from bleeding. They think that Thomas had killed her basically, and he is the murderer that we've been looking for. And then eventually, you know, we switch back to James, and he has woken up from another nightmare, so we know where he saw the murder of this woman happen. So we know now for sure James is not being possessed by this. He's not the one doing it, which I already thought was impossible. So I'm glad that we have a clarification. No, it's not him. And then Brother Enoch, one of the silent brothers, shows up, basically saying that because Cordelia notices that the buoyancy wound on her father was gone, and then she remembers that the ghost of Philomena said something of like, he took my strength when talking about his murder. So Cordelia asked Brother Enoch, when she noticed the buoyancy wound being gone from her dad, she asked Enoch to find out if Philomena had a strength wound, and now he came back to tell them that yes, she did, and it's gone now. So, you know, we knew the demon was stealing wounds from the perspective of the murderer. I should not say demon, that's not confirmed, but I think it's a demon. But we know the murderer was stealing wounds. We know that from a chapter we got from like the murderer's perspective, but now they know as well. At least that wounds are disappearing, so that's something. Then while Brother Enoch is there, he gets a message from the other silent brothers that another person has died and that they've captured Thomas and also inspection of that. So they all rush to the institute where a mass of people has gathered, and yeah, where we are, the consul, so Charlotte, has also arrived, and they are about to, I guess, put Thomas on trial. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, that's everything that happens so far. I'm very curious to see what's gonna happen next. I know is that Thomas is very unlucky in these books because in Chain of Gold his sister died, and now in this one he is suspected to be the murderer. Poor him. I'm glad. I feel like we're delving more in the mystery of things now, which I'm very glad we're doing because I think it's very interesting. And even though I have my theory of it being Belial, I don't know how he's executing it. So I'm excited to keep reading. Hi, I'm on page 450 right now, which means I'm a little over 100 pages from the end, which also means we have a lot to discuss. First thing that happens that let's talk to is that Alistair came forward as a witness saying he's been following Thomas because he knew he was on solo patrols and he wanted to be sure that he's safe because Cordelia is fond of him. Sure, that's the only reason. Now they're both in prison together, and we all know Cassandra Clare loves the great redemption arc in prison. Thomas got this like thing that looks like a steely stele. I don't know how to pronounce it. I should know by all the years of Shadowhunter reading, but it looks like a stele, and he got it from like the crime scene and he gave it to a band of merry thieves before the Inquisitor could get to it. If after some investigating they learn themselves that it isn't a stele but it is made of adamas, which is this material that a stele is made out of, so they decide to go to the shadow market to see if anyone knows more about it there. Of course, and nobody does. We also got a fight between James and Matthew. At the shadow market, Lucy does go to see Malcolm again, and there she makes the promise that if Malcolm helps her out, she will do whatever he needs to find Annabelle and maybe resurrect her as well, which I knew I said I wasn't gonna spoil it out of this, but it's painful, baby. And yeah, we flash back to Thomas, who is in prison with Alistair, and Thomas is obviously questioning. We got an illustration of Alistair right here. He looks dashing. And they have some conversation, and then Thomas basically does an epic love confession, which isn't actually a love confession, but he's basically like, oh, I can't hate you because of our time in Paris. He says it was like one of his favorite memories, and Alistair says like, oh, it's one of my favorite memories in Paris as well. Thomas is just like, you know, I know your favorite memory in Paris is with Charles, and like he's trying to hint like, I know you're gay, I'm gay, let's be gay together. But then before we can see Alistair's response. We flash back to the Merry Thieves, who are still at the Shadow Market at this point. Nothing came out of it. They did meet Magnus, who's in town for one day and one day only because he's been off with Jim doing something that we don't know. But I haven't talked about it, but we see Magnus and he's great. He basically suggests to go to the new realm, which is called Edom, together with James, to see what is happening, maybe confront Belial, whatever. So yeah, instead of going home, Lucy goes to meet Anna and Ariadne because they're meeting Hypatia. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And we got another Grace perspective, and here we learn something interesting, is that her powers work on all Shadowhunters, just not James. And Chana suspects it is because of his demon blood, and so she has found this bracelet that will tie James to Grace and like will actually like make her powers work on him, I guess. And then we have this really fun scene, and I really love this because I knew Grace was getting a redemption arc, and this is the start of it. I feel it. She basically is breaking into the console house. We don't really know why, but she thinks no one is there, and she tries to sneak into the laboratory, but Christopher is there hiding in a corner working on the little thing that they found. Something that baffles Grace is that immediately Christopher like proposes that he gives her a tour around the laboratory. So she doesn't use her powers on Christopher at all, and they have fun geeking out about science and things, and she actually helps him figure out what the thing does, and that is that you trace a wound with it, and then like that bit on your own arm you get the wound. So basically this is the way the person we've been seeing has been stealing the wounds from other people. Again, with Hypatia, we don't really learn that much new. When we're there, we just know that Manuel Cast did the protection spells on Jesse when he was born, not like Iron Sisters and or Silent Brothers. So that's something that happens. We go back to Thomas and Alistair, who do have a full-on love confession at this point, and they kiss, and it's adorable, and I love it. And then we flash back to Christopher, who has been alone in the lab ever since Grace left, and then Matthew just randomly shows up, and he asks for the thingy, and says that James needs it right away, which is peculiar because James is still, you know, with Magnus figuring things out. They go into, and we switch back to their perspective. James and Magnus go into the Shadow Realm. We go to Edom, which is blocked off by Belial, so Magnus and James can't actually enter it. But they do have an interaction with Belial. Where Magnus says you have one, you only need three, implying that Belial needs 3 wounds from Katana to tie. After he says that, like, Belial basically like flicks Magnus away, and then it's just a conversation between him and James in which Belial tells him that he has not been sending visions, and I don't know if that means that Belial is not behind these murders at all, or that he is, but he just wasn't intending for James to see stuff, and just that there's a different kind of connection that is making that happen. James tries to get back to the regular realm, but it's having difficulties with it until he starts thinking about Cordelia, and Cordelia basically saves him from being trapped in that realm forever. And of course, Cordelia and James have a moment where they hook up, but something is important that at a certain point during a hooking up, James's bracelet falls off, and it says it's 2 broken halves, so it's completely broken, it's done with, and I'm glad. And then we go back to Lucy, who is now in the Institute, and she summons Emmanuel Cass, and Jessamine is also in a room, which means that her powers are now exposed to Jessamine. But Emmanuel Cass, again, has nothing really to offer, just that there was an anchor in Jessie, which I don't know what that means. And then we go back to Thomas and Alistair. We are now, the Immortal Sword has arrived so they can be investigated. Of course, they didn't do it, but then kind of the Inquisitor goes a bit nuts. I don't know what went wrong with him. He starts freaking out, and then like something happens, and I'm still very uncertain of what it is because I'm literally right there where it happens. I'm very curious to keep reading. I think maybe the Inquisitor was body snatched, you know? But something we learned in between that is that Matthew obviously didn't go visit Christopher. He also has no clue what they're talking about. So yeah, that's the thing. And I'm very close to the end. I have 120 pages left, and I'm very excited to read those and figure out everything that's gonna happen, because I feel like at this point I have no clue, because I thought Belial was for sure behind these murders, but with what happened in Edom, I am not entirely positive that he's fully behind things. Hi, so we finished Shane of Iron. I'm very tired, so let's recap quickly. Something I got wrong is when I said the very left off is that the Inquisitor was doing something weird and he might have been body snatched. That's not what happened. Just that Belial started like an attack at the same time as the Inquisitor was having a fit, and I thought these two were connected in my tired brain. They're not. The first thing we learned since I last talked to you is that Lucy went to go see Jesse's body. On his body, the different wounds that have been taken from the dead Shadowhunters have appeared on his body, you know. And then she tries to like stab Jesse, but she is like hit on the head by someone behind her, which ends up being Grace, by the way, and it doesn't really matter. James has another nightmare of a murder. He realizes it's kind of like a premonition. It hasn't really fully happened yet. So he, Cordelia, and Matthew rush to the place where it's happening, and it turns out at this place, Charles was attacked. There's also the completion of a sigil, a Leviathan sigil, and he is like meant to be summoned by all of this killing. So yeah, that's what's happening at the Institute, is that what's happening over there is Leviathan kind of like being raised, only partially, because spoiler alert, Charles doesn't actually end up dying, so the ritual, I guess, isn't completed. So when Cordelia, James, and Matthew arrive at Charles, they immediately like try to start healing him, and in the process of doing that, someone appears, and that's Jesse Blackthorn, and his body has been taken over by Belial. And what we've learned is that when he was a little kid and when he got like the protection wounds from, what was his name, from the warlock, I forgot his name, he was under the control of Belial, and Belial basically also like forced him to put an anchor into Jesse, which is why he ended up dying when he got his first wound, because it's the angelic and demonic presence fighting each other. And now, you know, Belial is taking control of the body. We also have another confirmation that, you know, Belial had nothing to do with the dream. So where those come from, I don't know. Then, you know, they start fighting Belial, especially Cordelia starts fighting Belial, and we find out that it's been lit all along. I wasn't a fan of that reveal. I mean, I saw it coming, because like I said in the very beginning, just like the way they mentioned Lilith in this book, I was like, no. It was yes. Lilith has been behind everything. She has been like the fairy that first told, like the fate that first told Cordelia about Wayward and how he might still be alive, and like all this other stuff. She even was Magnus, which means that my one pride and joy is a Magnus appearance was fake. Betrayal. I felt so betrayed. Yeah, that means that Cordelia is like sworn to Lilith and not to Waylon, because he doesn't live anymore. Grace ends up like attacking Lucy because he thinks Lucy wants to destroy the body, when she thinks that her efforts to try and bring Jesse back to life has been working. So Lucy explains like that's not what's going on, and sends Grace to to Malcolm to like come and try to help them, and Lucy tries to go back to where Jesse is and kind of like rescue Jesse's body. Yeah, Cordelia ends up fighting Belial under the like commands of Lilith. Chaos ensues when Lucy shows up and tries to save the body, and then James ends up shooting Lilith with like the gun that works for him, which eventually is explained by some like protection spells that are on the gun, like scared Lilith away. That I thought it was a very lame resolution to that part. I'm assuming that Lilith will show up in the next book. Lucy ends up commanding Jesse to expel Belial from his body, which ends up working, and Belial goes out of it, and then he's brought her back to the Shadow Realm. So James takes Cordelia also back to the Shadow Realm, where they strike him and then like come back. So now he's struck in twice, which means the third time will be in the next book. You see how this works, everybody? Again, I just feel like kind of was a disappointing ending to everything, especially because Jesse is still like a dead body at this point. So like at least resurrect them properly do this, you know? Malcolm Fate shows up. Eventually, portal closes back that Leviathan was coming through, and everything's saved. Yay. I thought that was such a lame resolution, but oh well. I expected something more high stakes, but it was over in like a minute, and I was not a fan of it. Then they have to explain to like the Clave what happens, and like basically James ends up telling what happened, but like leaving out all of like the things that tied him to the demons. So yeah, we have that. Oh, and also because now there's a connection between Belial and Tatiana out in the open, like the Inquisitor goes back, like wants to go to the place where the Iron Sisters are to like question her again. Yeah, the friends talk, discuss everything, catch each other up. Alistair is being annoying to Thomas, and they like don't really break up because they weren't really together, but like they break up, you know? Yeah, and then we learn that Malcolm and Lucy have planned up this thing where they're gonna steal Jesse's body from the Institute and like go off to like Cornwall, I believe, to resurrect him. And Lucy invites Grace along. Ariadne and Anna also broke up because Ariadne goes to Cordelia's place because she knows Anna is there to kind of like see how she's doing, but like once she can see them like in the window, she's like scared to go. And then eventually Anna ends up coming out, and they basically, Ariadne is trying to take things to a next level, and Anna like turns everything down, and like Ariadne's getting like frustrated, saying like, you know, I don't mind the fact that you don't love me, but like the fact that you're not allowing me to love you is just not it. So they break up there, and we see Anna being visibly distressed with this, which starts the next array of actions by characters that are just so fucking stupid for no reason. Before Grace is prepping to leave to go with Malcolm and Lucy, but right before she can leave, her mom appears in her mirror, which again, how that happens, I don't know. But Tatiana is basically kind of like threatening her, and Grace kind of realizes that like Tatiana maybe might not have the best interest of Jesse at heart, and then she like shatters the mirror and runs away. Fun. And then James and Cordelia having like a heart to heart in bed, and James ends up saying the most stupid thing in the world, saying that I do not feel about you at all as I feel about Grace, how I ever felt about Grace, which he's starting to figure out that everything with Grace was fake, but like, honey, that's not what you should have said. And then of course Cordelia get like really upset, but also at this point I'm like, honey, you know that's not inherently a bad thing. Like, use your brain for 2 seconds. Anyway, someone knocks on the door, and James is like, hey, Cordelia, stay in your room because I desperately need to talk to you. It's urgent. So stay there so we can discuss this as soon as I kick out this person. Turns out, when he opens the door, it's Grace. Fun. And Grace, being stupid as she is, like immediately falls into James' arms when he opens the door and says, I had to tell you, darling, I'm going to end it with Charles. I cannot bear it anymore, James. I will not marry him, and never was anyone for me but you. Which I'm like, why are you doing this right now? And then James, oh, the poor unfortunate soul, goes along with it, and he's like, I'm gonna pretend to like still be into this so Grace will like give me information about how she like manipulated me and stuff like that. And I'm just like, honey, no. No. They end up like going into a separate room, and James is like, cut the crap, I know what's going on. And Cordelia and Grace ends up explaining everything. She wants to tell him about what's going on with like Lucy and like stuff, but like he interrupts her and he's like, no, another word out of you, you've manipulated me enough. And I'm like, babe, listen. Anyway, James calls on the Silent Brothers and is like, you're gonna confess to the Clave, and like the Silent Brothers are gonna get rid of your powers because they're mean, which the only smart decision that was made in this part of the book, I swear to God. When he goes to call on the Silent Brothers, he notices that Cordelia is nowhere to be found, and so their maid is basically it's like, yeah, she saw you with that girl like in an embrace, and she went off. Stupid Cordelia for doing that, and also stupid James for going along with it, because otherwise it also wouldn't have happened, and he had no reason to go along with this. Then James goes off to run after Cordelia. Fun. We get a perspective from Will, which is fun. Jasmine comes to him and Tessa and basically tells them everything that Lucy has been planning, and the stupid people that Tessa and Will have come to be for some reason, because they've never been stupid, are like, Jasmine, she's always over embellishing everything, like, but it's probably nothing. Jasmine wouldn't accuse your daughter of necromancy if it was probably nothing. Cordelia ends up running away. She ends up at Matthew's place, which, solid. Don't hate that. But yeah, she tells Matthew everything that happened, and Matthew's like, oh, I love you. Which, I mean, it happens a bit more tactfully, but he's like, I love you, and I was planning to go to Paris because I thought James had finally realized that he had feelings for you, and you were gonna be happy and in love, and I could not bear to see it. And he's like, how about you go to Paris with me so we can both forget about everything that has happened? I'm like, solid, kind of, but like, also why is your only solution to be like, confess that you're in love with her, and then like just running off to Paris? Like, that's Matthew, I love you, but no, we're not doing that. And of course, because it's apparently the era of stupidity, Cordelia agrees to go with him, and it's like, yeah, fun. And of course, again, because it's the era of stupidity, James shows up at Matthew's place right after they have left for the train station. And at least Matthew has been so considerate to write James a letter detailing everything that happened, which was painful to read, knowing everything that James is not actually in love with Grace, but solid. James ends up running to the train station, and right as he gets there, right before the train is about to leave, Will stops him because, again, stupidity, and it's like, hey, your sister is getting into some dangerous shit with Malcolm Fate, so how about you come with us, because I think you'll have more leverage over her. Like, she'll listen to you more than she will to me or to Magnus, who's also going along, because we did actually get a proper Magnus appearance in this. I mean, I'm glad James is going to Lucy, but like, couldn't you have waited like 2 seconds so James could at least tell Cordelia, like, I never loved Grace, she manipulated me, I love you, but now I have to go do family business. It's a very big emergency, because Bill asks him to like not say anything about Lucy's predicament. It's just like, you could have just said something, but they didn't do that. But then yeah, epilogue, Shauna escaped. That's it. That was this book. I guess it wasn't obvious. I didn't like this one as much. I'm giving this 3 stars because I didn't hate it. For a solid time there in the middle, I was having a good time, but I thought the first part of this was just a bit too slow for me, and it kept focusing on things I didn't care about, and I don't think Cassandra Clare made a well enough effort to make me care about it, because I even forgot to tell you that Lucy and Jesse kiss at some point, which anyway, I did not care about a lot of the things that were happening there, and the development of the actual plot was going so slowly that it was just not really fun for me to read. And then when we got properly into the plot, I was having a blast. I was on my edge of my seat. I was really tense trying to figure out what's happening. You saw all my theories. I was so involved, so invested. I also got more focused on things that I was actually invested in. And then the resolution of the plot was just so lackluster in my opinion, and everything that happens after it is just pure stupidity. And I want to bash my head in from that ending, because honestly, I am very excited to read the last book, so that video will also be coming soon, because just the place where these characters are and at the end of this book just makes me wanna like put myself out of my misery and just like finish the series. But I have seen a lot of more negative reviews for this last book, so I don't know what numbers about that. This is the character chart. Also forgot about it. This is how it looks now. There weren't that many changes to it, but how it is. This was a massive disappointment. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.
in the same old situation. Why does the God thing have to be so complicated?